thank you for having me, Gerald, and pleasure to be here. And Gerald gave me an assignment, so I'm going to spend a few minutes, very brief minutes, to talk about my journey and how I ended up in plant pathology. It's a weird story, the very beginning of it. Gerald, I don't know if I've ever told you all the details, but I'll be very brief. I don't want to talk about myself too much, but that's what I'll talk about first. Then we'll talk about diseases of strawberry. I will talk about them in a general way, but also why bother talking about them? I want to build a case for why we're going to spend a few minutes on that. And then diagnosing these things. We're going to build a case for why diagnostics are important and in the context of strawberry. Why will we do that? And then briefly at the end, some research needs on strawberry, okay? So that's where we're going to go. First, just a few things. So I started my career, I wasn't a plant pathologist yet, but I started as an undergraduate at UC San Diego for 2 years. And I went there to study botany and agriculture at UC San Diego. Now, anybody know about UC San Diego? How many professors of botany do you think are at UC San Diego? Any idea? Any idea?
2, 3.
You're being very generous. There are 0. How about agriculture? How many professors of agriculture at UC San Diego? There are none, 0. And how big is the department of botany or agriculture? Richard, how big is the department there? Do you know?
At San Diego?
At UC San Diego?
Probably no department.
There's no department. So I just want to show you how really smart I was as a high school senior and a freshman at college, because I went to study botany and agriculture at UC San Diego. Okay? But I want to tell you that was why I'm here today. I had to be at UC San Diego for 2 years because while I was there, I made a friend, and his name was Gordy. And after a little bit of time, after my friendship with Gordy, the scales fell from my eyes, and I said, I got to go to Davis to really study agriculture. And so I told Gordy I'm going to go to Davis, and he goes, oh, that's great. You know, I have a relative up there. My uncle is a professor at UC Davis, and so we should go up and meet him. I said, great. What's he into? And Gordy says, oh, my uncle is a professor of plant pathology. And I said, oh, good, that's nice. What is that? Some industrial thing, accidents in factories, stuff like that. Anyway, when I'm cutting short here because of time, these 2 years at UC San Diego were essential because I met Joe Ogawa, professor of plant pathology, because of those 2 years with my friendship with Gordy. And you see, it paved the way for where I'm here today because I became an undergraduate who studied plant pathology. I worked for Joe for 4 years as his lab technician. That set me up for graduate school. And then after that, everything I did was basically in plant pathology. So that set up my plant pathology career. So without Dr. Ogawa, I wouldn't be here. So I have what's called, Gerald, it's the transitive property of career development. Okay? Transitive property of career development. If you remember transitive property in math, it goes like this. If there's no UC San Diego, there would have been no Gordy, right? Got that? If I hadn't gone there, I wouldn't have had this friendship with Gordy. And if there's no Gordy, there's no Uncle Joe. I wouldn't have known Uncle Joe because then there's no Gordy, right? So the transitive property tells you that if there's no UC San Diego, if there's no 2 years in the wilderness when I didn't know what I was doing, if I didn't have that 2 years in San Diego, I wouldn't have linked up with Dr. Ogawa, see? And that would have made the whole difference here. So really, when I think about it, this is really crazy how this worked out. And I was pretty stupid back then, going to UC San Diego to study botany. Come on, And I'm not letting my parents off this either because they didn't help me here with this. They didn't say, botany, plants, UC San Diego, why are you going there? They didn't help me with that. So, all right. And then, like I said, it kind of set the whole path doing that because from lab technician, I did work in agriculture the whole time. I made a little bit of a detour. I worked for wholesale nurseries, as Gerald mentioned, for a few years. But then got into regulatory plant pathology with the ag commissioner at Santa Barbara. And then my long tenure with UC Extension. And then finally, industry plant pathology. So thanks to Joe Ogawa and my undergraduate at Davis career, this is where I've ended up. It's been a pretty straight shot here. And again, the scales have to fall off your eyes, Richard, until you see what you really need to do, right? And so I've been really lucky. I mean, when I think back about it, it's kind of scary how it could have gone a different way, right? Final thing about career lanes, I've been very fortunate in terms of this trajectory. Some people are not as fortunate. So, Gerald, I don't know about your personal interests of what you do outside of work and other interests. One big interest of mine is history of art and music. I really am interested in history of some of our artists and musicians. And just to draw a comparison, I'm a big student of Van Gogh. I know a lot about Van Gogh's work and his life. It's a personal study. Van Gogh did not have a straight shot into his career because he did a lot of things early on here. And let's just be really honest, he was a loser in these careers. He did very poorly in these jobs. He should never have tried these jobs because as a person and with his skills, he could not pull that off. And he got fired or booted out of all of them until he found art. And of course, the world's better for that. Quick trivia question. How many years was he an artist, a professional official artist? Anybody know? Anybody know? 10 years. 10 years, that's it. Of course, part of it is he was wayward in the wilderness here, but 10 years. So that's a cautionary tale for us. Make good use of your time, okay? Make good use of your time because you just know how much you have, all right? The last thing I want to say about career development, and we talked about this in some of the meetings today, I have a secret here in terms of what makes you successful. I'm going to tell you that, okay? It's the people you partner with. I really feel I've been very fortunate in my career as a plant pathologist, not because necessarily of my own skills, but I found people who can help me and guide me and mentor me in the various areas in plant pathology. And we won't go through all the names, that's a waste of time here, but I want to illustrate that really the key to success in any career, and certainly in mine, are the other professionals, the professors, the mentors, other researchers, who you can find and who you can talk into helping you develop your program, your skills, your career. And to be honest, Gerald, really I credit all these people with really anything I've been able to accomplish. It's these teamwork collaborations that have come up that really have helped me. And so these are really, in my mind, really stars and really important, famous people for me, because that's what makes a career, is the collaborations that I've been able to put together. And I'll just be really honest with you, Richard, I'm shameless about asking for help. I'm shameless. I'll call these guys, say, we found this fungus, you work with this fungus, I want to work with you, here's the background, I'll meet you at APS, do what you can to build collaborations. That's what's done it for me, really. It's not my own skills. I don't really feel I had special abilities at all. It's the supernatural abilities of these collaborations that make it possible, okay? The one last thing about careers, because I was with UC, I had a chance to do some traveling, and I found myself in China one year to give a talk at this international congress, and I was on a tour at the Great Wall of China. Well, I don't know if you know this person's name, but Yao Ming is a famous basketball player. He's this huge mountain of a man, basketball player, Chinese, who played in the NBA, also Chinese national team, so a very famous person. Well, you know what? I was on the Great Wall of China, and I got to meet him. I got to meet Yao Ming in China at the Great Wall, and we have a picture together of him and me. Now, no offense here, but you know what? Yao Ming doesn't look very Asian in person, I'd say he looks more Asian on the television, okay? I'm just saying, okay? All right. Let's move into our really important topic here, so that's strawberry. So I'm going to talk about strawberry diseases, and I need to build the case for why would we do that. Why would we do that? So two things. One, strawberry to you is this little fruit, but we want to reframe that in a different context. There's two different contexts. One is we want to think about the strawberry industry, the strawberry growers, the people who grow this. You see, we're not just talking about a commodity or fruit. We're talking about someone's lifestyle, their livelihood, their business. These growers have families, bills. They have to pay for college or schools for their children. These are people who have an industry whose livelihood depends on the quality and the amount of their commodity, okay? So, yes, strawberries is fruit, we like it, but I want you to think about strawberries from the point of view that this is someone's business. I mean, someday you may be in a business, and whatever your commodity or purpose of the business is, you want to maximize that because it's going to support you. You're going to have a business, you're going to make income, and you're going to support your family with it, right? So it's important. That's why strawberry disease are important for this context, because it takes away from the productivity of a grower. And then the second part we can all share on this, and that is we're all consumers, right? We're all consumers. I assume everybody here likes strawberries. That's an assumption. But you want to go to the store, and Gerald, you're going to buy some strawberries, and you take it home, and 2 days later they're all gray and icky and runny. I mean, as a consumer, are you happy with that? No. You're earning your own money. You're supporting your own family. You buy a commodity. You want it to have certain quality and features that justifies you buying it. So from a consumer point of view, strawberry quality is very important to you, right? It could be true for lettuce, broccoli, whatever. But so we're looking at the producer and the consumer. That's why diseases are important, because they take away from the quality and the satisfaction of the product, okay? So that's my pitch for why we're talking about diseases, because diseases are very important on this crop. We're not going to have you memorize the names, but there's a bunch of diseases. There's a bunch on the leaves and a bunch on the fruit. But really we want to focus on a couple, because year in and year out, powdery mildew is probably the most important one as a foliar disease in California, probably. There are exceptions, certain years, but probably the most important. And then on the fruit, botrytis or gray mold and powdery mildew, probably the most important ones on the fruit. Again, year in, year out, there are different years, things change year to year, but in general, you look at 5, 10, 15-year run, these are the three foliar fruit things that are the most important. And let's look at a few of these, since Gerald assured me you know nothing about strawberry diseases. We're joking here, right? So here's some pictures just to show you what they look like. Here's leaf blotch, it's just fungal disease, angular or bacterial leaf spot. You know, on these diseases, the bacteria actually can ooze to the surface of the leaf, and so you can scrape it off. That gold honey-colored stuff is actually pure bacterium, Xanthomonas. It kind of oozes to the surface of the leaf. Powdery mildew on the leaves. This doesn't look like a big deal if you have curled leaves, but it actually reduces the productivity of the plant, the strength and vigor of the plant. So that's why it's important if this gets out of hand. Powdery mildew can also be on the fruit. Obviously, this is a quality issue. You don't want to have this on strawberry fruit because that affects the quality. Botrytis, the most important disease probably overall, depending on the time of year and the year, but we have different phases where the botrytis can actually kill the blossoms. And then we have, of course, various stages of fruit. This is all pre-harvest. This is in the field. And then, like I said, Gerald just spent $6 on his clamshell, takes it home. It gets all moldy in a couple days. He's upset about that. Didn't get value for his $6. That often is botrytis post-harvest. Okay, we have other things too. That's post-harvest. Okay, anthracnose is another disease. Can be very important in some years. Different phases again to it. There's a fruit phase. It can be on vegetative stem or leaves. Also can kill off blossoms. And you know, dead blossom does not yield strawberry, right, Richard? Remember that from your farm advisor days? Yeah, very good. So so we have problem with different phases of anthracnose on the strawberry. Okay. And just a couple of minor ones. Gerald and I were talking about this earlier today, but there's some other minor fruit things. Can be very important depending on time of year, but for the most part, they're second to the botrytis issue. Okay, rhizopus and mucor. Okay, so that's a quick rundown on foliar fruit diseases. Let's talk about the soilborne problem. So, as you already know, soilborne means the pathogens in the soil. That's where the inoculum is. And there's a couple of reasons why we spend a lot of time on soilborne pathogens. One, they're very destructive. I think you could see here, hopefully in the back you can see, when you lose half of your crop to one of these pathogens, that's significant. This is cutting into the grower's income and the viability of the business, right? When you have fields like that. Very, very destructive in the soil, and you can see that from an early stage it takes the plant down. The other reason why these are important is that they live forever, biologically speaking. They live for a long time in the soil. Most of them make a little structure called a sclerotia or a chlamydospore. There's some survival structure that's microscopic, but the fungus is making these by the millions sometimes in the field. And these in the field will be there for a long time. So The grower may not come back for 5 or 6 years for another strawberry crop. These things are going to be there waiting for him or her. They're going to be waiting for the grower because they last for a long time in the soil. So there's a lot of research. Your center does a lot of research as well on this facet of pathology, the soil-borne problems, because they're persistent, they're very damaging, and they're long-term concerns for the industry. There are 4 major ones in California. Again, you can argue with me, yes, there are some other ones, but year in, year out, there are 4 major ones. There's Fusarium, Macrophyllumina, Phytophthora, and Verticillium wilt. In general, for California, these are the 4 major ones, okay? And let's have a look at them. So here's Fusarium. You can see with the inside of a plant with Fusarium. There's the brown plants I showed you in the other photograph. Fusarium wilt on strawberry. Macrophyllumina, discolored inside, death and dying plants, Macrophyllumina. Phytophthora, dead and dying plants, dark inside. There's also a phase where if it's rainy, wet, or the fruit are sitting in water, you can have a fruit infection phase as well from Phytophthora, and that's kind of unique among this group of soil-borne pathogens. And Verticillium wilt, another one where you get significant death and dying from plants, from this particular fungus, Verticillium wilt. Very important, historically important disease in California on strawberry. Okay, so those are the disease problems, fruit and foliar, soil-borne problems caused by pathogens. We also want to briefly talk about other challenges to the growers because there are what I call the non-pathological challenges for growers. These are not caused by any particular organism or pathogen. So you know this already. All crops have this issue. There are nutritional fertilizer issues, genetic mutations. There are physiological disorders that strawberries get. And then a whole range of abiotic. Abiotic, as you tell by the name, just nothing to do with a biological organism or a pathogen. Abiotic, it's got to be something else with weather or something else. And here's some 4 examples where strawberries are very sensitive to high salts. You probably know that. So if the field has high salts from the water or soil, that's a problem. It's an abiotic issue for strawberries. If it's too cold, you have ice, too hot, burning, hot sun, hot temperature, we have problems with strawberries. The grower, or from rain, if there's excess water in the field, that's an abiotic problem. And then we don't like to talk about this too much, Bill, do we? But there's something I call operator error. Operator error. You know what that means? It's like the growers
Screwed up.
Yeah, they screwed up. The California growers are great. They're very, very highly trained, very competent growers of strawberries, but highly trained people make mistakes too, and we have operator error, where growers maybe spray something, or the PCA sprayed something wrong, or didn't spray something on time, they over-fertilized, irrigation's not timed correctly. There are things growers do, even though they're the professional high point of strawberry production in the world in California, things happen, and that's an abiotic category of problems, okay? So we just want to tip our hat to that and point out these are also challenges to what growers are doing. So there are nutritional things, physiological, here's calcium deficiency, and high salts on strawberries. So these are things the growers have to deal with as well. A quick comment on this one. It's crazy, but you know, there's marketing standards, right? This is a physiological disorder where the calyx will brown out on some varieties during some time of the year. The strawberry will continue to mature and be great. The strawberry fruit is wonderful. But if it's got a brown calyx, it's hard for our growers to sell those. So it's kind of a funny thing with our marketing, right? Here you have a beautiful strawberry fruit, but the green part that you're going to cut off and throw away, if it doesn't look good, this is not as marketable as one without it. So it's kind of a crazy thing that our growers have to deal with, but that's kind of the reality of the market. Okay, moving on. So let's talk about diagnostics. So if we had more time, I was going to set this up differently. I was going to show this slide and have Dr. Gerald here identify what the problem is on these 4. And Gerald, I'm sure he would have gotten them all right. No, he would not have gotten them all right. You see, because a lot of these diseases, they look identical in the field. Look identical. It's not even similar. They look identical in the field. And so I, myself, and Dr. Gerald, if we're smart, we would not render a field diagnosis in any of these cases. You would not tell the grower, oh yeah, that's Macrophyllumina, Richard, no problem. I could smell it. You smell that? That's macrophamina. No, you would not do that because symptom-wise they're identical, okay? So we want to talk about the whole thing about diagnostics, okay? And I need to make a case for why diagnostics are important. Why are they important? So now in 2025, with all of us living here, I should not have to spend much time on this. You know why? Because of this. Recognize this? What is this? Ever recognize that?
COVID.
It is COVID. It's the COVID virus. And so people who are living here, who survived COVID, we know more than any generation in modern times the importance of diagnostics, you see? Because where was the world before we knew it was COVID? We were nowhere. We were nowhere. I mean, we were worried about dying. We didn't know how it was spread. What's the cause? Is it on my clothes? You know, can COVID be spread on my clothes? See, we did not have a diagnosis for this pandemic that affected millions of people and killed so many people, right? And so if you don't know what's going on in the medical world, you are handicapped in terms of trying to devise a solution and cure it and build that vaccine or whatever you're going to do in the medical world. If you don't have an accurate diagnosis, you are nowhere. You're just guessing. That's why diagnostics are important in medicine, okay? And not only what virus, but what strain. You know, as we know, it's important to know what strain. So if you're a doctor or a research in medicine and you don't know what strain you're working with, you are nowhere. You're nowhere in devising the vaccine or coming up with the solution. That's why diagnostics are so important in medicine. Well, I'd like to argue the point that it's the same thing in agriculture. If our growers don't know what's exactly causing the problem, what's killing their plants, what's that rot in Gerald's box, he's complaining. This consumer here is complaining about his rotten strawberries. Well, what caused that? If we don't know what's going on with that, we are nowhere. We are compromised in coming up with solutions and moving forward with controlling strawberry diseases, okay? So that's my argument here. So you convinced? You convinced? Good? Thumbs up? All right, so we'll move forward. So a couple comments on strawberry diagnostics. And you know this already, not only from medicine, but your other experience in ag. You know this already. Diagnosing plant problems is the first step. It's the first step before you can attempt meaningful management. You can guess what's going on out there, but agriculture in California and elsewhere as well, it's such an expensive, risk-filled endeavor. You don't want to be doing too much guessing. You want to know what's going on in your field, right? The growers cannot be guessing a lot. So diagnostics is the first essential step before you manage it. And we'll do this quickly. This is nothing new here. You know about this, but there's a sequence in terms of trying to do your diagnostics for strawberry or any crop. First, you take note of the symptoms. Any other field information or data, like, you know, is it just one strawberry field or these four have it? Are they all the same variety? Did they all come down to the problem at the same time? There's two different varieties. One variety has it, the other doesn't. These are field observations and data that are important to the diagnostic process. Oh, the symptoms are along the edge only. It's not in the whole field, it's just on the edge. That's data we need to know to support our diagnostic effort. Then you need to have supporting lab tests. California growers are very fortunate. There are a lot of tests that we can run for these pathogens. 50 years ago, we didn't have as many. Now we have more. Some are DNA-based, others are culture-based, but you have a lot of tools to help us diagnose these things. So that's part of the diagnostic process, is the supporting tests. Okay? And then you want to do your due diligence. You have to ask the grower or the PCA, you say, we're doing tests for you, I know the symptoms, but tell me about the field. What goes on out there? What was the spray pattern or the spray history? Did you spray anything there in the last week or two? Any herbicides put out there in the last month? What was the weather like? Was it raining hard? You have plants collapsing in the low part of the field where it's wet. We're going to look at Phytophthora. So you want to gather any information, time and space, around that crop, because that's going to support our symptom observations and our lab tests. And then history, very important for soil-borne problems. You have a field here where 30% of the plants are dying. You talk to the grower, he said, oh yeah, there's this little lab I heard, it's called TriCal Diagnostics. You may have heard of it, Gerald. And 2 years ago, they did soil tests for me, and they said I had 50 microsclerotia verticillium per gram in that field. and I'll say 50, and they let you plant that, 50 microscotia per gram for verticillium, that's going to kill plants, strawberry plants, hugely above the threshold. So what's the history? Is there a history of verticillium, macrophamina there? Tell us what happened in the last 2 to 5 years. That's very important for the diagnostic process. Okay? And the final comment about diagnostics, the more precision, the more precise the diagnostic, the better management. So you can go out to a field these days and you say, yeah, Gerald, it looks like there's botrytis out there, so you can spray more. Or that looks like mucor, there's nothing to spray for that, but just get rid of the fruit. You can do that, but if you have more precision through testing, your due diligence with data observations, if you have more information to support that, you could be more efficient with management. And especially for soil-borne things. If you don't know what the history is, you can find out by doing soil tests, but it's better to have a history. If the grower had soil tests done in the last 5 years, boy, get that data. That's really important data to look at, and that may help support the diagnostics to come, okay? All right. Okay, the other problem with strawberry diagnostics, am I here, Larry? Yeah. Okay. The other problem with strawberry diagnostics for soil-borne, they all kind of look alike. I may have mentioned that earlier. They all kind of look alike. What I've done here are the 4 major soil-borne plant pathogens in California. Here are the symptoms, the basic symptoms they cause on strawberry. I'm not going to spend your time to go through this, but what the problem, you see the problem here? There's too many yeses. There's too many yeses. All these have yeses. And so if they all have the yeses, how do you separate them? You cannot separate them. Got a question back here?
Associated with water, is that less water or excess water?
Oh, thank you. I should correct that. Excess water. The principle being for Phytophthora, it loves water, so excess water makes it worse. The other 3, you shouldn't overwater strawberries anyway, but is it directly related to the epidemiology in these 3? No, not really. So good point. So I have to correct that. Gerald, all right? So see, too many yeses, the overlap. You can't go out there and say, hey, that looks like fusarium to me. Dr. Holmes says it's a fusarium also, so we agree on that. I'll say, Dr. Holmes doesn't know what he's talking about. Did he do a test on that? No? Come on now. We have to test this, right? So that's the problem with soil-borne symptoms is the overlap here.
But what if you have 30 years of experience?
Right. Do I have time for a quick story?
Still, yes, please.
Okay. I was in Ventura County. Who's from Ventura? Someone's from Ventura County. I was in Ventura County. We had just discovered the new macrophamina disease on strawberry. We were the first lab to find it. And so I was down there looking at fields, and I talked to the grower, and I go, yeah, that looks like macrophamina. We've been finding it elsewhere around you. It's a problem, period. Point finished. So I was going to get ready to go back to my truck, and he goes, Steve, thank you for that information. Aren't you going to collect the sample? Aren't you going to take a sample? And, I wasn't. And I thought, oh, of course, I always tell growers, you sample, test everything, so he caught me there, right? Oh, yeah, I'm just going to get my bag, let's take a sample. And so we took the sample back, and Gerald, you know what? That was not macrophamina. That was the first field in California with fusarium. The first ever. And so it's like, whoa, that was close, I almost made a big mistake there. So you have to sample. You have to sample and test to get around these things, right? And that's one where I almost made a mistake. All right. Okay. And so here's the answer. I'm sure Gerald would have come up with this. This is the same size before, but here are the answers. I'm sure Gerald would have got 100% on that. But see, they all look kind of the same. And therefore, diagnostics without supporting lab tests are dangerous. And you're taking a guess, okay, in my opinion. Yeah. The other thing is, this is not just academic information. It's not just saying, oh, it's macrophamina, it's fusarium, it's Phytophthora. It's not just academic information. This has real-life consequences for the grower in some situations because, depending on what you find here, it may have an influence on the next crop. Or for the strawberry grower to come, the previous crop may have an influence on what he or she's doing, and that's crop rotation. The way plants are grown between each other, it has sometimes a very important implication. And here's how it works for strawberry. Verticillium wilt, which is hugely important on strawberry, the same strain, the very same species and strain, also goes to lettuce. It's a very big problem on lettuce. These two crops suffer from the very same pathogen. even the same race. And so if you know you have verticillium in lettuce and you don't tell the strawberry grower who's coming after you, the strawberry grower could be at risk, and vice versa. Here's how it works schematically. Strawberry and lettuce are really important crop rotation partners in coastal California, right? There's a lot of that going on. And they both get fusarium wilt. However, we're good here because there are different species and different strains of fusarium on strawberry versus lettuce. They don't cross over. That's why there's no connection here. Doesn't matter. Strawberry fusarium does not affect lettuce. Lettuce fusarium doesn't touch strawberry, okay? So it doesn't matter. Crop rotation doesn't matter. They both get Phytophthora. It doesn't matter, though. They have different species. Different species don't cross over. The Phytophthora 1 will not affect the other because they're different species. They both get Pythium. In my opinion, Pythium is a non-issue on strawberry, so it's kind of zeroed out there. They both are reported as Macrophyllumina hosts, but Macrophyllumina lettuce is not a thing in California, not yet anyway, till we find it. So it's not a big deal. But look at verticillium. It's the same pathogen for strawberry and lettuce. And so crop rotation is very important here, because if you're not fumigating, the verticillium from one crop will cross over. It'll cross over to the next crop. So these are really important bits of information for our growers, and it's not an academic exercise on which fungus is this. Yes, sir.
So, for example, fusarium, is there some sort of allelopathy or hostility between the two species and both species occupy the same field?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if everybody heard that. Is there some sort of interaction between the two different fusarium pathogens? Do they fill the same niche? Do they compete with each other? That sort of thing. That's a great question. I have no idea. I don't know. So sounds like a question for the Strawberry Center to tackle. But great question. And it's very important pathological or epidemiological question. Yeah, I don't know. So, okay. All right. Okay, disease management. Because of time, but also you don't need me to spend a lot of time here. I think a lot of you have a good ag background. You probably know the principles of disease management. And even if you don't, this is readily obtained on websites. Look at the UCIPM website. You'll get a really nice summary of that. But for foliar things, basically you want to start out with clean plants and you monitor. You see what's going on out there because you're mostly going to be applying a product, a fungicide. And that's organic or conventional, but you're going to be applying a fungicide to deal with most of these. And then the issue is when do you spray, which product, the rotation of the product, resistance management. You kind of know that, I think, already in general. We do have some varieties that are like powdery mildew. We have some strawberry varieties that are a little more tolerant than others, so that's another factor there. But it's pretty straightforward, and again, you don't need me to go into that too much. Same for Soilborne. These are principles you probably know of already. Where are you going to plant the strawberry? Because if there's a history of verticillium there, it's not been fumigated, you should think twice about it, depending on the soil test, right? Again, start out with clean plants. The rotation, I already went through with that with you, especially regarding verticillium. Pre-plant fumigation, still very valuable, essential tool in conventional. And then other things, sanitation means you don't plow this field with verticillium and then go across the road and plow or disc your next field. Because what are you doing? You're moving verticillium with you to the other field. I mean, they all do it. We all do it. It's hard to be zero with sanitation prevention, but that's what happens. We do have some resistant varieties, as you know, from your work here at the center, and some production steps, stress especially. I know someone's doing some work with stress on strawberries and Macrophyllumina. But this is pretty straightforward here. And you know, these tools, especially varieties, really important. I mean, here's one of Tom Gordon's slides, but it just shows you the difference between a resistant variety and a susceptible one for some of these soil-borne problems. Okay. Okay. How are we doing on time here, Gerald? I'm almost done.
You got 10 minutes.
Okay, no problem. Grab this. Okay. So let's wrap up here a couple things. Let's just talk about strawberry research. Some priorities. Bill's here. Bill would know much more about it, but this is my real simple take on some considerations for strawberry research. As I'll point out in the next slide, we get these new races. It's like COVID, okay? You say COVID's COVID. No, it's not. COVID is the G strain, or I forgot the names now, but it's all just different strains, different COVIDs. Some are really virulent and dangerous. Others will give you like flu symptoms, okay? They're different. In the strawberry world, there are different races for some of these pathogens. In terms of research, we need to be aware of that, detect them, find them, understand them. We have to understand and detect what I call new pathogens. I'll give you one example at the end, and we have to define new. It doesn't mean it's brand new to the world, but brand new to California strawberry issues and growers, okay? So there are some new things coming in. We, of course, want more management tools, more resistant varieties. The center here is working on some of that. Better and different alternative fungicides. Fungicides are very important tools, but we can do better. Let's find some that are less toxic, more amenable to organic systems, last longer, have less impact on the environment. We want to do better. Very important tools. That's a research area. And then one thing I'd like to see is inoculum thresholds. We have these soil tests that tell you more or less how much verticillium or macrophage is in the soil. With few exceptions, that number is not very helpful, okay, in my opinion. If we do a soil test for one of Bill's growers there and it comes back with 0 or 1, what does that mean? What does that mean? We have to interpret that. If it comes back with 1,000, we don't need to interpret that. We could say, hey, Farmer Joe, there's 1,000 of those per gram in your soil. If I were you, I would plant arugula. Okay, don't do strawberry. Okay, so those are the extremes. But in the middle, if the test comes back with 5 or 10 or 12, what does that mean, Gerald? See, I don't think we could tell the grower really what that means because we don't have a threshold. Threshold means here is the threshold. Below it, your risk is reduced of these diseases. Above it, the risk is increased or a certainty. We don't have those thresholds for a lot of these problems. It'd be nice to get those. Very difficult research, and that's why we don't have it probably. But that'd be a nice objective for the research. Okay, last couple things here. I showed you the sort of strains, variants, different races of human pathogens. It's important. We want precision in our diagnostics for our problems, don't we? We want that. Well, it's not any different for plant pathogens because now we're a little bit smarter and we know that there are different races and strains of these pathogens that affect lettuce. For verticillium alone, we have documented 3 races, race 1, 2, and 3. Now, are they all important? We don't know. One of these, race 3, may turn out to be very weak on strawberry, not important. But we may find out next 10 years, the race 2 is very aggressive on strawberry, and it's kind of been spread everywhere. And we may find that this big strawberry company with the letter D, no names, but they have some resistant varieties out there, they'll start to collapse because of the new race 2. So this is why precision in diagnostics is not an academic exercise. We need to know exactly what's going on with these races and strains in strawberry pathogens. And it's happening for all crops. Here's what's happening in coastal California right now. You're not too interested in this because of our context here, the strawberry, but Fusarium wilt and lettuce, there are at least two races out there now. One, we don't even know exactly what it is, so we're calling it X. We're really creative in the plant pathology world, Richard. We don't know what it is, say X, okay, X, right? So X, and we don't even know how to test for it. I'm kind of worried as a business person. We run a business, and we do not have a test for the other race of Fusarium on strawberry. We don't have that test yet. So I'm nervous about that because our current test picks up race 1 and X. It will detect both. But the grower will say, hey, do I have that new X race? And I say, I can't tell you. We don't know. So I'm worried about that because we're not full service. We're not complete in our diagnostics for lettuce. Quickly, celery, again, there's more than one race. We do have a test. It's a DNA-based test for both race 2 and 4. We can separate them, and we run that routinely for our celery clientele. Okay? And for strawberry, there's 2 areas where there's diversity. I think most of you know already, you've heard, there's at least 2 races now of Fusarium on strawberry in California. Fortunately, race 2 is not very broadly dispersed as far as we know, but it's out, there's 2 races. And so where's that going to lead? We'll find out. And we can test for both, but still, this is a thing the strawberry industry will have to grapple with in the years to come. And then finally, verticillium, I mentioned 2 before. There are 3 different races of verticillium in California. And where's that going to go for our strawberry industry? We don't know yet. We don't know where it's going to go. Last thing, and I finished here. New things. New things. We have to define new. This is not brand new to the world. It's not even brand new to California. This fungus has been around for a long time, but it's new in the sense that it's a burning issue for our industry. And the issue goes like this. Is this a pathogen that we've never heard before? Steve Koike never talked about this in his 30 years with Extension. So either it's new or he's really out of it and didn't keep us informed, right? So hopefully it's not the latter. Okay. So anyway, so it's new. What does this mean for me as a grower? Is this going to reduce my yields? Is this going to reduce the marketability of my plants? What does this mean for me? I read about all those articles in Florida and Mexico. They're losing thousands of plants to this, and they're losing yield like crazy to this fungus. So this is a new issue for us in California. What is this? We know we have it in California, but is it something important? Is it a different species than the Florida one? So does it mean that the Florida have problems because it's a different species? One in California is not important because it's a different species, or is it because of the weather? So this is an example of something new that could be addressed or might be a research issue for our growers depending on how things develop. I personally think this will never become a huge issue in production strawberry, but it might be something that becomes more important. And also it's marketing, right? If this is on strawberry transplants that are shipped to Florida, well, who gets the responsibility of that disease breaking out in Florida? California does, right? Rightly or wrongly. I mean, that's how it's going to market. So the strawberry industry is going to have to grapple with some of these questions about something new, okay? So with that, I want to thank you for your time. Gerald, thank you. It's been a pleasure to see you and visit with you and your staff. Thank you for having me. And we know that if Gerald and I stick around long enough, we're going to cure everything. So, Bill, you're going to be out of a job because we're not going to need research. We're going to cure everything. All strawberry fields will look like this in California, and all the fruit are going to look like this. So, apologies, Bill, but when we cure all these, maybe you could work for my lab. You could work for me. Okay, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So Gerald and I got it covered. We'll take care of everything, and we'll go from there. Okay. Last thing, how did I do? Oh, I did really well. You liked my talk. Okay, good. All right. Thank you, Gerald. I'm done. Yeah, I mean, Gerald, you probably have a better answer. I think there's a lot of unknowns. That's a really good question. It's a deep question that pathologists have been asking for a lot of crops for a lot of time. But there's some suggestion that, resistant or not, these pathogens are growing on roots, sometimes growing on non-host roots even. And so they're either sustaining themselves or increasing on a resistant variety. So it might be something that your crop's fine, but the population is stable or increasing maybe. I mean, there's some suggestion of that. Tom Gordon did some great work on that to show that fusarium on resistant crops or on non-crops, it's still there and maybe growing. It's not like the old days where we'd say, plant a resistant crop or rotate with a non-host, the fusarium's going to die out, it's not going to persist. That's kind of old news. It's not as cut and dry as that. So I don't know if that answered the question, but there's a lot of question about it.
Like having going from a severe flu that knocks you out for 2 weeks to like a little bug was like 24 hours in terms of severity on the plant.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. It's hard to say. It's a good question. I just don't know.
I don't know if I follow the question.
So let's say, fusarium race 1 resistant variety. Non-resistant, like a severe flu knocks you out.
Yeah.
But you plant the resistant variety, the fusarium is still there. It's thriving, but it's just not causing it. So it becomes like a very mild cold. Right? Similarly, we saw with like the alpha and the delta coronavirus that it still got, just didn't knock them out. The second time it was just like,
When you plant a fusarium-resistant variety in a field with fusarium race 1, the plants look outstanding. They are doing very well in the presence of that pathogen. I don't know if you planted, in a soil completely free of that pathogen, if there would be any difference at all. But I agree with you, Steve. There's a lot of unknowns about what Fusarium is actually doing, and I think there's some evidence that it actually colonizes the plants,
right?
And even some of the others, some weeds, and it survives and maybe even increases in the absence of a susceptible host.
Yeah,
which is very disconcerting.
Yeah,
the idea would be, it's going to reduce the inoculum load.
Right.
But no, when you plant, and we have growers that do this, they have fields that are infested with race 1 of Fusarium, and they grow a very successful crop using a resistant variety.
Yeah. But the question is, what's happening below ground, and that's where the pathogen can infect those roots of the resistant variety, but it doesn't go vascular. It doesn't go up and cause disease, but it's in the roots, small feeder roots. So the argument would be, well, maybe it can sustain itself even in the presence of a resistant variety, and so you're not reducing the population of the inoculum necessarily from just planting the resistant variety. That's what Tom and some of the other people are finding more. It's a more nuanced story than that. So, but like Gerald said, the plant itself, the resistant plant, should look great. Yeah. Bill, did you have a?
Bill?
Yeah. Steve, very nice talk. I really appreciate hearing it, and I really appreciated your talk about angular leaf spot. It's an important disease. Hey, but,
I had 2 pictures for you.
2 other groups of pathogens: the nematodes and viruses. How much are you running across any of that stuff in your laboratory?
Okay, sure. Again, I'd be curious about the center feedback on that. Viruses are very rare in terms of our sample load. I don't want to say it's 0, but we get very few of those. Now, admittedly, we're not set up for strawberry virus diagnostics. That's a very complicated area. Other people, like especially CDFA and Davis, they can do a better job with that, so we're not set up for viruses on strawberry. The nematode, I have a lot of experience with that. I've looked at a lot of strawberries for 30 years, and I think I've seen a nematode present causing symptoms and recoverable maybe like 5 times. And that's including organic, so it's not like a fumigation artifact. So I've seen Melodia only on strawberry, half a dozen times. And I'd say, in my experience, I don't know about others, please share. In my experience, there was 0 effect on the crop. The sample was submitted for some other reason. I would say in those cases, there was no clear or documentable effect of the nematode on the strawberry, mainly because you find 3 or 4 roots with 6 galls on it, and the plant, we found some other problem accounting for some poor growth. So I think it's a non-issue in general, but again, things could change, and maybe you have better experience than I do. So.
You want me to add to that?
Yeah, add to that. Yeah.
So I appreciate Steve's had a lot more history on it, and we just have found recently more instances of root-knot nematode on strawberry. I don't know if they're more significant. In each case, there's been another pathogen present. Mm-hmm. And so what it's actually doing, we don't know. We're interested to find out.
Yep.
Nematodes and vascular wilts have a tendency to interact to make things worse than they would be alone. So you have a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario where the nematode feeding is causing some stress or some entry points for a fungus, and those 2 things together are worse than either one alone. So there's that possibility. But we haven't seen any kind of a meltdown, but we have about 16, I think it's 16, isn't that right? Yes. Stephen has been working on this. So 16 sites in addition to your 6 or over the 30 years. We were sampling pretty intensively for a survey, so that's why we ran into that many. But the number of instances doesn't make it important. It just means that it's out there, pretty prevalent, but what it's doing, we don't know.
Yeah. And for me, this is just personally, for me, the data I pay attention to is organic growers, because they're not fumigating, right, to knock down nematode. And to me, we found a few organic growers with nematodes. More of the sample was on conventional, interestingly, but organic, the couple cases we found, again, it was incidental, and really didn't see any effect of that. And over time, these growers, they're doing a great job. They rotate well, but we don't see Melodia persistent on strawberry for these 2 growers. And that doesn't necessarily close the case on it, but to me it's important that even without fumigation, we're not seeing a nematode issue. So, all right.
You made a comment about viruses, and that you're not really looking for viruses. They're kind of rare, and viruses are really, really common in other crops, right?
Right.
Like I worked on cucurbits. Everybody know what a cucurbit is? The gourd family crops, watermelon.
That's a virus heaven, right?
It's like virus. There's just so many viruses.
Yeah.
You can't walk into any squash field without seeing viruses. And so for us to be free of viruses, almost free of it in strawberries, is really unusual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you find that unusual?
Yeah, it's unusual.
Yeah.
Of course, we have a program, right? The virus program run through CDFA and other institutions, right, to help police that, I think. But still, even with that, I'm surprised there's not more issue. Yeah.
Yes.
And the 1 or 2 years when there's a virus outbreak, everybody gets excited about it, right? I know 10 or 12 years ago there was
Palidosis.
palidosis, and it became a huge thing. And then I haven't heard talk about it since then. So that's good. Good for our growers. But
It's probably the clean, start clean, stay clean.
Yeah, I
And our
think so.
nurseries do a very good job of producing clean plants, and they are continually flushing the system. They don't keep old plants and keep reproducing from those. They're always getting new, fresh material that's been micro-propagated to be virus-free. So it is an important issue. What other questions from the group? Did you learn something about strawberry diseases? Yes, Richard.
For a strawberry grower, or let's say a grower, because sometimes they're growing other crops as well, they can send their samples to TriCal, I'm assuming, for diagnostics.
sure.
Can they send them to the Strawberry Center for diagnostics?
Yeah.
If it's a strawberry plant, yes.
If it's a strawberry plant. They can send them to UC Davis for diagnostics.
Yeah, you can send to any camp.
Campus.
UC
And
Davis
there's
or
a
Riverside.
lot
Yeah.
of private companies that will do it as well.
Not a lot. I mean, there's a handful of private labs like our own.
Okay.
Of course, Richard, we're the best, right? Yeah. Why are you laughing?
Well, we're the cheapest.
Yeah.
We're the cheapest.
Oh, we're not going to go there.
We don't
but,
want to,
yeah.
go cheapest,
Yeah.
so.
I don't think we should accept questions from retired farm advisors, though. So yeah, but no, yeah. I mean, let's be honest. There's a lot of resources, a lot of professionals out there who do a good job. The center here does a good job. The campuses, commercial labs like ours. We're not the only commercial lab. So absolutely, growers have choices. Is that an airline line or something? You have choices. I forgot. But anyway,
I will say that when you were a farm advisor, and I would send samples to Steve, and the turnaround time was quick and accurate, and every once in a while we'd send a sample to both Steve and to a private lab, and 99 times out of 100 they were the same.
Mhm.
So your
Sure.
quality was very good.
Yeah, good. And timing's important. I mean, again, I'm seeing my friends here from Davis, but yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Davis is not UC Davis, UC Riverside. They're not designed, and their intention is not to be a diagnostic lab. That's not their purpose. They can provide that service, and they do a great job. Some of the world's best pathologists are on those two campuses, so avail yourself of those if it works for you. But that's not their job, and that's why I do get complaints from some of our clients who say, I split that last sample. I gave you half, and half went to Davis, and it's been a month. I haven't heard back from the Davis group, and so, timing, and that's part of service. It's our job, it's our purpose to be accurate and fast, so that's why we're doing that. And Davis has great resources, but their job is a little different, so we got to cut them some slack on that. And if you could wait a month, go to UC Davis. But Richard, I'll expect you to send your samples to me.
20, yeah. Well, I did. And 20 years ago, things were different. And Davis, it depends on who they have running that program, and their turnaround time 20 years ago was a lot better,
Yeah.
I'm sure, than it is now.
Yeah. Things have changed for sure. Yeah. And again, we're not disparaging Davis. It's just that they're researchers, they're educators, they're teaching classes, so that's not their purpose. Our lab and probably Strawberry Commission here, the center here, our purpose is to get back to the grower in a timely way to help them. So we have different priorities. So yeah. So.
Do you mind if I ask what would it cost to have a test run for, say, Fusarium 2?
We have standard pricing. So for a plant sample, we charge $155 per sample. And we don't a la carte that. So we'll test for a couple of Soilborne things. If you have a target, we'll test for that. But if we see symptoms on the leaves or flowers, we'll run that here for Colatotricum too. It's all covered by the same fee. We don't do a la carte. We want to give the grower a complete picture of what's going on with the sample. In fact, a lot of growers, again, California growers are great. They're very experienced, but they're not plant pathologists, right? That's not their job. And so they'll send in a sample and say, hey, I think this is a virus on my parsley, and we'll check for that, but we'll say, he's got something on the root, so let's run a root test as well. And, that's part of the service, is the whole package. So, yeah, sure. Yes, sir.
This is definitely a very broad question, but have you generally found disease management over your career to become easier or more challenging?
Disease management?
Yeah, or it's kind of your whole career. Has it gotten easier as more practices, more tests, more specificity has come out, or more challenging as new things develop, new restrictions in terms of products people can use?
Okay, so I'm keen on your word management. So that's controlling the diseases.
Yeah.
And as you know, I'm not a grower, so personally I'm not into that, but I advise growers on how to do it. It's become a complicated world, like most things. It's become more complicated. The basics which I showed you, they're about the same. There's not world-breaking new methods on IPM, so it's about the same. But the world's more complicated, primarily because there's more targets. I just showed you for diseases. 30 years ago, we didn't have all these strawberry Soilborne disease. We had 2 of them, just 2. Now there's 4, maybe another. So it's become more complicated, and I challenge you from that point of view. And then the whole thing about agrochemicals is more complicated too, right? In terms of regulations, what's available, what's labeled, off-target site considerations. So I think it's a bit more complicated, but the basic framework is about the same, and you just have to swap in the parts. As varieties are developed, you swap those in. Still varieties that are resistant, that's still the same, but now we have different names for them. So a little bit of both. It's same frame, but more parts to it. And I think the key is being aware of change. I myself want to be aware of what's happening, because if I don't know there's been a new change in the varieties or a new fungicide, I'm a little bit out of date. And I don't want to be out of date. So there's change that all of us have to be aware of in a particular field. That's kind of how I look at it. So, okay.
Is there another question from the group?
You can give like a percentage of the amount of samples you get just for strawberries compared to the other crops that you're receiving?
Sure, good question. The breakdown in our sampling, just rough numbers, so don't quote me, just top of the head. So roughly we get 5,000 to 5,500 a year. That's all plant samples. I'm not talking about soils, okay, that's different. But all plant samples, let's go high, 5,500 per year. Easily 85 to 90% of those are our coastal crops. So that's mostly cool season vegetables, caneberry, strawberry. And as you know, we have a very significant ornamentals industry in California, coastal California. So those are the main things for that 85 to 90%. If I had to break it down further, it's more hazy, but clearly cool season vegetables and strawberries are the main players. We get more cool season vegetables just because there's more of them, right? There's 30 or whatever main crops, from arugula, broccoli to whatever, celery, whatever, and just strawberry, caneberry on the fruit side. So I'm guessing if you had to just group those coastal crops together, maybe 3/4 are vegetables, and then 1/4 would be the strawberry caneberry group, and that's very rough, very rough. And it trends too, right? I was telling Gerald, we had some rains this past spring, so we've been making bacterial media like crazy because a lot of the early season vegetable samples are all bacterial. Why? Because the rains, right? Rain enhances that. You have seed-borne pathogens on these vegetables that are bacteria. Add rain, you get disease. So we're making a lot of SPA and tween media for xanthomos, all these things for bacteria. So, but that's a rough breakdown on that. Okay.
I have a question about one of the main. You spent a good amount of time on the soil-borne pathogens and the diseases that they cause. It's a huge area, very concerning for the industry. This is a big, big threat. And the main way that they have been managing those pathogens is through fumigation. Pre-plant soil fumigation. So what is happening, could you comment on what's happening in that arena that's changing our landscape? Is it making things more difficult? Is it creating new problems? Do we have effective alternatives? Could you comment on that?
You mean just in terms of managing Soilborne problems in general?
Yeah.
Well, let me start and let me see if I'm capturing what you have in mind. So it's pretty straightforward. These Soilborne pathogens, we can't spray fungicides. The way we farm, you can't stop growing strawberries in some of these pieces for 10 years, which would help. But I mean, that's not how our system works. Strawberry grass just come back and grow strawberry. So there is, again, TriCal. There's a heavy dependence on fumigation. And I think it's pretty simple. I mean, the framework, as I mentioned, is kind of the same. If you're conventional and you can afford it, you do fumigation, you rotate a little bit, but no one rotates the way you should in terms of plant pathology principles. They may rotate for 1 or 2 years out of berries, but they'll be back the third year. It's not like organic growers are better at that. They'll rotate out of strawberries sometimes 5 or 6 years, which helps, and they'll come back. There's still problems, but it's not as bad. But and again, Bill and you probably have better answers, Gerald, but I don't think there's that much new there. It's just we're kind of stuck there with these persistent problems. We don't have widespread resistant varieties for all the diseases and still have the yields and the quality we want. There's not that complete package. So growers still have to resort back to Monterey or whatever, some varieties that are susceptible to get what they want for markets. So I don't know, I'd be, again, curious on other reflections from the audience, but I think there's not a lot to say there, and that's why I think the industry needs to be cautious about going forward, because we don't have a ready solution for this unless some company comes up with varieties that are resistant to 4 pathogens, can yield 10,000 crates per acre, and has beautiful fruit like an Albion or something. So I think that's a challenge. And again, let me know if you have another opinion on that.
I follow it up. If we lost the fumigants, and we've lost some,
yeah,
right, and it's very difficult to get a new one. So let's say we lost them all, we couldn't use fumigation at all. What kind of impact do you think that would have?
Yeah, wow, yeah. I mean, that's scary, because that's a question my company is looking at all the time, right? I'm not a fumigant person, but I work for TriCal. It'd be huge. It'd be huge because I don't think we'd have the same type of industry. We wouldn't have the number of growers. I think things have slowly devolved to where some fields you just couldn't grow strawberries anymore. So you'd have to either implement a really good 5 to 6 year crop rotation or get out of growing strawberries. So it would have a huge impact on us. And that's why, the main one now is chlorpicrin, which you probably know, which does an excellent job, but it's not perfect. And so it supports the industry now, but it's not perfect. It doesn't kill everything all the time. So it's important now that it's available to the growers. There are not really good alternatives yet in terms of chemicals. So it's kind of a very narrow street that they're driving through right now, and not a lot of options. And so to lose that material would drastically change the face of the strawberry industry. Yeah.
Are GMOs a possibility?
Do you want to address that, Bill? Are GMOs a possibility? I mean, it's always possible, but I don't know if that's something the industry will readily adopt, or if it's available short term.
In the short term, I don't think it's really that available. There's marketing stuff that has to go along with it. So, there's no silver bullet option there either. It's not like they're sitting there hiding in the shadows waiting to jump out.
Yeah, you may know that. I was going to say a few years ago. We're dating ourselves here, Gerald. Maybe 25 years ago. I don't know. A long time ago, the lettuce industry looked into GMOs for lettuce, for resistant lettuce varieties, and that was a discussion at the research level. The growers were involved, of course, but they immediately said, no, we're not going to do that, because they're afraid of market acceptability of a GMO lettuce product. And you see, the problem is, let's say the lettuce industry went in and developed GMO lettuce. Well, you come into the market, and let's say you're opposed to GMOs, you prefer not to do that. Which lettuce is the GMO lettuce here? You see, you can't identify which is which. And so it becomes a problem for those who are not into the GMO game, because the lettuce looks the same. You could talk about, well, it should be labeled differently. I mean, that was some of the possible discussion, but the lettuce growers said, we will not delve into that pool now, because we want our entire product line to be accepted to the community, and so we're not going to do GMO lettuce. And so that's kind of how they looked at it back then.
We've got
So,
it. We've got it in squash. We've got it in
Yeah.
sweet corn.
Sure. Well,
But-
soybean.
But they don't. Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
back east.
Yeah, but yeah.
Here in California, we've got it in
Yeah.
sweet corn, and
Yeah.
we don't know what we're eating.
Yeah, yeah, and other field crops. Yeah, so it's interesting. But our lettuce industry made a stand on that based on some of the marketing considerations. I imagine the strawberry industry would do the same. Have to examine market implications for that. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Oh,
Steve,
one more.
back.
Have you had any like exposure or seen incidents of like foliar nematodes in strawberry in California?
Okay, great question. Foliar nematode on strawberry in California. That's Aphelincoides, which is one of the rare ones that's not a root pathogen. No, I've never seen. It's called spring crimp or something like that. I've never seen it. Doesn't mean it's not around, because I'm just telling you my experience. But zero, I've never seen it. Now I do find it in other crops and ornamentals and things like that. So we know how to look for it. We can do an extraction and we can do nematodes. I have a background in nematology, so we can do that. But I've never ever seen on strawberry. But that doesn't mean it's not out there. Yeah. Yep.
Piggyback off of the nematodes, is it because you look at a strawberry leaf, it seems much more rougher and tougher than, say, some of its ornamental plants? Could that be one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of foliar nematodes?
Great question. Don't know why. I'd suggest that the leaf texture, it's a relative thing, right? So we can find Aphelincoides on like ferns and things like that. Some of those leaves are pretty rough and tough too. So, and I don't know when they're infected. Were they infected when they're young fern leaves or old? Same for strawberry. You can have very delicate young strawberry and older leathery. So I don't know how that influences, but yeah, I don't have enough data to support it. Since I have zero data, we haven't seen it ever.
I have
Yeah.
seen it on strawberry in North Carolina, but pretty rare. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't have an answer though as far as leaf topology and its influence on
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
pathogen like that.
I mean, actually, for leaf things, that's more in your area. We'd be more concerned with like cyclamen mite or things like that can cause deformity, right? And so that we've encountered periodically, and again, have to extract it to find it. So we're more concerned with that probably than Aphelincoides. But good question. And as a diagnostic lab, we always want to be open to that. So if we start seeing that, I'll let you know. All right. All right.
All right.
All right.
Any other questions?
All right.
All right, Steve. It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Good to see you.